Good day. I'm Ann Childs, membership chair of the League of Women Voters of Radnor and a retired Wayne Elementary School teacher. The League has been working with parents, administrators, and school board members throughout the region to study sleep and how it makes a difference with our young people. Today I'm happy to have with me two Radnor High School students. They're both sophomores who know a great deal about sleep and its importance to them and their friends. Let me introduce you to Lauren Yang and John Sotheby. Lauren, I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind starting. How do you and John get interested in this study about sleep?
So it all started with a class last year called Integrated, and we were assigned a project in which we needed to create like a special interest group project thing. And so we decided to do it on teen sleep deprivation because we thought it was a really prevalent topic and issue in our community.
Did this come from a class that you had at 7:30 in the morning? I wonder. It must have been hard to think about it then. John, do you have anything else? Does that happen to you as well?
Yeah, we were in the same class and we kind of weren't sure what to work about, and our teachers advised us to do something that we felt we were affected by, because it's much harder to do something or to research something that you don't care about or that you don't actually like have an opinion about.
And I think if you're suffering getting up so early, well, that means you'd have to get up at 6:30 to be at school at 7:30, right? Oh, that's even earlier. Oh my goodness. How about you, Lauren? What was the focus of your research when you began this? And John, you chime in whenever you think it's appropriate.
So at first we wanted to focus on why sleep is important, because that's such like a question, like why do we need sleep? So what we found out was that in studies, animals that were deprived of sleep lost all immune function and died in just a couple of weeks. So basically when we're awake, the brain has neurons that produce adenosine, which is our brain's way of telling us that we're tired. And sleep deprivation allows for a buildup of that. And then however, when we are asleep, our body has a chance to flush out that adenosine, and when we're awake, we can feel more alert and awake.
I had no idea. I just knew I was tired. How about you, John? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, when the research that I focused on, I also did some background research, but then I wanted to see if this really affected our community, because some people just don't think like, oh, that happens other places. So I decided to do a survey, and first I just kind of did it of my class, and then I realized I reached out to the class advisors of each grade and had them distribute it, and we got about a third of the school to take the survey.
Oh, really?
So we got a really good participation. About a third of them were freshmen, and then about the rest were kind of divided equally with sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And the numbers were actually very alarming. I didn't think they would be that significant. 80% of them thought that they need more sleep, and 87% of them were in support of moving start times back to, say, 8:30. So this was that was much more of more people agreed with it than I thought. I thought it would be more controversial among the students.
So it sounded like it was kind of the majority, I guess.
And one of the other questions was we wanted to see how much sleep students are actually getting every night. So we wanted to see if students were getting less than 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours, 8 to 9 hours, 10 or 11, or like more than 11. And the American Association of Pediatrics recommends between 8.5 and 9 hours.
Oh, really?
So we're kind of hoping the majority of kids would kind of fall within that or just a little less. But the majority of kids got 6 to 7 hours, 55% of them. And then 32%, the next biggest, got less than 6 hours of sleep a night. So it's clearly a problem. That's over 87% of the student body that we surveyed that are severely lacking in their sleep on a night-to-night basis, which also leads them to sleep a lot on the weekends. Most people are sleeping more than 10 hours every weekend.
Oh, to catch up, they say.
To catch up, and it's like, oh, that's okay, yeah, he's so tired, let him sleep in on the weekend, a lot of parents think. But it's actually very harmful on the body. It's
Well,
called
it just
binge sleeping.
Yeah, it throws your rhythm out, I bet.
It throws exactly. So it's not a good way. So by making, hopefully, this research really just allowed us to see how this was affecting our students and allowed us to see more into what solutions were going to be helpful.
Yeah, well, that's good. That sounds like that's very in-depth. Did you get any comments from students? I mean, not beyond the survey. Was there anything that kids commented on? Lauren, I was thinking about what does it mean for you and your friends when you talk about sleep beyond the survey? Is that
Well, one of the questions. Sorry, I'm just going to kind of take
no,
this because this
please.
was also kind of
Go on.
one of the things I looked at was we had just one question at the end was, is there anything you want to share with us?
Oh, okay.
Or like,
all right.
how do you feel like this would help? Just kind of a comment section at the bottom of our survey.
Oh, okay.
And some of the things were like, I would be able to get more sleep and finish assignments, which would mean I wouldn't stay up till 2 in the morning working on homework. That was from an 11th grader. So that kind of shows like, wow, if you're used to doing that, that's not that great. And they're also kind of hinting towards when people are tired, they don't do their work as quickly. It takes them longer to get it done. And then people said, I would feel much more rested and alert during school, which if you're more rested, you're going to learn more in school,
sure. You
which,
can attend.
again, you'll understand your homework better, so you'll be able to get to sleep sooner, get it all done, retain more information.
Efficient. Yeah.
And then a 10th grader said, it would allow me to get extra sleep in before school starts after a long night of studying in sports, which just a lot of kids have hard extracurriculars or lots of homework, and everyone agrees that just by getting a little more sleep, it would help them in all aspects.
Okay. All right. No, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought, Lauren, is there any casual kinds of comments or things that you wanted to add to that had ramifications for your friends beyond the survey? How about that?
So after we found so after we did the survey and we got all this data, we wanted to see like, what does this actually do? Like, why is it bad for you? Like, we know that it makes you tired and you're like grouchy and stuff, but actually what are like the consequences that truly happen inside your body? And so one of the first, I guess, sections we kind of focused on were car crashes and unintentional
consequences.
injuries.
Oh my goodness, yeah, wow.
So basically, a big consequence of teen sleep deprivation is the increased risk of like unintentional car crashes and even death from it. And there was a study, a North Carolina study, found that 55% of fall asleep crashes involved drivers under the age of 25, and at least 100,000 traffic accidents each year are caused by drowsiness.
Wow.
And so this is kind of prevalent to our community particularly because Radnor High School allows juniors and seniors to drive if they have a parking spot.
That's true.
And so this, like, you heard those quotes from before, like, these students are tired, they stay up late to do homework, and a lot of people play sports, and those games go late. So it's really dangerous that they're driving when they're sleep deprived.
Right, yeah, I can see that. Any other things that happened besides, any other ramifications physically or biologically that you want to mention?
Yes, a couple, particularly mental illnesses and suicide. Basically, the National Sleep Foundation surveyed more than 1,600 teenagers, and their data showed that more than half showed signs of depression. And people have said that it's a really vicious cycle, that sleep deprivation leads to stress in school, which includes like emotional and mental stress, and this leads to depression. And there's been research showing that there's a region in the brain that's involved in complex behavior and thinking and regulating emotional experience, and therefore the impaired functioning of this part of the brain plays a critical role in emotional health and those repercussions.
Wow, it's a lot to think about. That's such good information, John.
And even to build on that further, there's a lot of links that people have done between obesity and sleep deprivation. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay. So basically, basically obesity and sleep deprivation have a chemical kind of relationship. So leptin is what decreases hunger, and ghrelin increases hunger. And lack of sleep makes your brain think that you're not getting enough energy, and that you have to eat to get that energy, and therefore the hormone leptin is suppressed, while ghrelin kind of skyrockets and makes you more hungry, even though like you might have already eaten, but it's because that's what your brain thinks.
Oh my goodness. And she's sort of a scientist, I think. A very fine scientist.
So that's when, at the end of the day, when you start to get tired and you want to go to sleep, there's a certain point where your body almost goes and then says, okay, well, I'm not sleeping, so I need more energy to stay awake.
So then
and so
you
then
would have to
you kind of get an artificial, like, oh, I need food just to get more
energy. Oh,
energy.
wow. Yeah, that sounds like a tough cycle if you're involved in that. That would be a hard one to get out. Sleep deprivation, or not getting enough sleep when you need it, is a huge issue. Is there anything that can be done to help our middle school and high school students do better in school and avoid mental and physical problems?
Well, the American Association of Pediatrics, as I said earlier, they recommend 8 to 9 hours of 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep a night, and they found that 87% of high schoolers weren't getting this, and the majority who were going to schools where their start times were starting later. So they have released statements where they don't think that school should start before 8:30, just for the health of the students, so they can get enough sleep.
That would be quite a significant group to support that evidence. My goodness, with authority. Well, how do you think we could find out more about this, other than the things that you've related? Is there anything else that that seems that has a good solution to it, or why don't we just do it?
Well, I'll kind of answer that one section at a time. Well, so a lot of one of the things that a lot of people do is they kind of compare to other schools, and so other schools. There was a school in Wyoming, I believe it was, and although I forget the name, they moved their school start times back, and it was like this big deal. They thought it would cost a lot of money, and they actually saved quite a bit of money on busing, because just from by changing the logistics, and it was a very good thing. And so that's one of the major things that people think, is that it is going to cost a lot of money, and in reality, sometimes it will, but other times schools are able to save, whether it's a couple $100,000, $10,000, but
yeah, to be determined, I guess.
Most schools are able to save money, so the schools who have looked into it have been, for the most part, surprised at the cost aspect of it.
Interesting. That's interesting.
And then another aspect is people wonder if sports schedules will be able to work after, because they're like, oh, first of all, the PIAA has all of their
competitions.
Their competitions for high schools at the same time, but they are not opposed to starting a little later, or flexing the start times by a little bit. We spoke with the athletic directors of both the middle school and high school about just this the overall sleep thing, and they said they think they could work around it, honestly.
That's interesting.
Because for away matches, they generally, and if it's far enough away, they end up starting at 4 o'clock anyway. And a lot of times they end up starting late just from people warming up or doing their pregame rituals or whatever.
Right.
And so they have expressed that they don't think it would be that hard of a thing to work around. And then another thing that I did was I looked at other schools in our area, like private schools, especially because they tend to have later start times.
Was that right?
Episcopal Academy is in our area. They start at 8 o'clock. Notre Dame, Academy of Notre Dame starts at 8:15. Both of those schools have pretty good sports programs too. EA has a fantastic sports program. They have kids being committed for college lacrosse freshman year, soccer sophomore year. They have kids who are #1 in the country at different sports, and they're able to work around it.
That's interesting.
All their kids have to take do a sport every season, and they're still able to work around having later start times. So this really isn't that much of an issue. That
It's just a change,
as
right?
we've researched. Yes,
Yeah,
it's just a change.
Wow. Anything else you can think of? Other things that could happen in the community that are would be affected by it, other than sports? Is there anything else you can think of?
Generally, some people are just worried about, just kind of a common rebuttal that people have is that if people start school later, they'll get out of school later. That's a given, because we're not trying to shorten school hours or
That's
anything.
right,
That would be a very hard thing to get changed. But we believe that if we did get school moved back and it started later, although people would possibly excuse me.
No, it's all right. You're doing great.
Although they might go to bed later, which, first of all, they might not, because if they're more rested, they could get their work done faster. But even if they do get the same amount of sleep every night, by going to bed later, they're actually getting more restful sleep, because as teens progress through puberty and after puberty, they get more restful sleep between if they go to bed later and sleep in, as opposed to if they go to bed early and wake up early.
I see.
So that's something that
interesting.
most people aren't actually aware of,
Yeah.
or they say, like, oh, you shouldn't sleep in, like, just go to bed earlier. But for high school students, it's actually healthier for them. According to several websites that we looked at, the National Sleep Association, we looked at the American Association of Pediatrics, and we found this to be the same in, like, on different sources, that students get more restful sleep between by going to bed later and sleeping in later.
So 7:30 is better than 6:30 to wake up, right? That
To
hour
wake up,
makes a
yes.
difference, right? Do you believe, I believe actually, that the school district is looking at ways to promote more sleep for students. Do you know anything about this? Have you talked to, is there any movement in Radnor to change it? Do you know at this point?
So last year we decided to take our project a step forward and present it to, we wanted to like show the community like what's our research, and basically we went to the school board and we presented to them. We gave them a bunch of statistics. We particularly focused on our survey of our school, because obviously that was probably very impactful.
Sure,
And
specific to here.
We figured that a lot of parents have tried to lobby this, and we figured that taking a student aspect, we knew for a fact that none of the parents had given a survey, and the sheer volume that we got, a third of the school, over 330 kids, to take the survey, really helped persuade the school board to
look at it.
to look at it, and we're now part of a committee that's looking into the relationship between school and sleep and what can be done. And we're trying to look more at, one of the things we're looking into is, in the past, schools have our school has released policies that teachers aren't supposed to give tests on the same days, or
mentioned that,
not
right.
supposed to give excessive amount of homework. But the teachers aren't talking about it, because each teacher feels that their class is very important. So they're all giving what they think is the good amount of work for their class. But since the teachers aren't communicating, and it's very hard to get all these teachers to communicate, because
Everybody's so busy.
everyone has a different schedule.
Right, yeah.
Very few people have the same teachers, let alone the same classes. And
That's an interesting, I think to make the change effective, you certainly would have had established good communication between
Exactly.
everybody in the school, and that's often difficult,
And that's
given
where
time constraints and other things.
it's just unrealistic to expect all the teachers to go out of their way and talk to every other teacher about each student who they have in common for a class.
Right.
It's just unrealistic. And on the committee that has been formed, we joined the task force for athletics, and that's where we've been talking to the athletic directors just to learn more about what they think.
You
And
mentioned that's interesting to me, to think that there might be some wiggle room, because I thought some of those things were set in stone. So there's always the compromise. Now there's a word.
and we talked to them and kind of got some of their ideas about what they think would work. And then there's also a student task force just to get some kids who are who have different opinions about the school in relationship to sleep. And Dr. Stevenson asked us to try to head that. So
Oh, great.
that's,
More work for you. That's wonderful. This is fascinating, John and Lauren. Really, I was really glad to talk to you about this today. Is there anywhere our viewers can find out more about sleep and anything that the sleep issue that would help the public understand it even better? Is there anything you can think of?
So in particular, we created a website that's called A's through Z's with 3 Z's.
Love that. Perfect.
And it has all the consequences, the biological repercussions, and also an interview that we conducted, and a couple blog entries and connections and all those statistics you can see for yourself.
Oh, that sounds great. That's great. Really, I'm so fascinated with this, and I can't thank you two enough. I really learned a lot today. Thank you for sharing for what you've learned for us today. Not getting enough sleep is a big issue, and it's going to take a village, in case a township, in this case, probably and its neighbors to solve. With your knowledge and passion, we are optimistic that you all can make a difference. Your dream of sleeping until 7:30 at least seems instead of 6:30 on Monday through Friday could become a reality. Our dream of having happy, healthy students eager to learn might also come true. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I wish to thank Studios 21 for this opportunity to share with you this exciting work that is being done by the students in our community. Thank you very much.